Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Inside Out podcast. I'm Cristina Villalón.
I'm Ricardo, Álvarez-Díaz.
And today we are going to be talking about fear.
Yes.
Today I have my little list instead of you.
Right. And we're going to actually continue the trend
Uh-huh.
of now you interview me.
Yes.
Last time I interviewed you.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So
let's see what happens.
Fear, Ricardo.
Yes, Cristina.
You have spoken about this a lot.
Fear, yes.
How fear has marked a lot of your journey. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think in general, the word fear is something that it's sometimes difficult to actually understand if you're fearful or not. And then you kind of justify it in different ways.
Okay.
Like maybe I'm not ready, or maybe I don't know enough, or I'm not smart enough, or maybe there's many ways you could kind of hide or justify something without realizing that what you are just feeling is fear. So,
Well, why don't you tell them the story
what story?
about 2008?
Well, yeah, I could tell you a story, but that's one example of how fear permeates. I think we opened the company in 2001. I opened the company in 2001 because you opened your own, and then, and it was 2008. It was actually September 2008, and for many of us old folk, we remember that weekend because that was a famous weekend where the bubble burst in 2008. So. Within a couple of days, every single one of our projects was canceled. Every single one of them. And you were pregnant, 8 months pregnant with our second daughter.
Yeah.
And I honestly did not know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was just paralyzed. I had necessarily no very clear prospects. You were pregnant. I had all the weight in the world that I had to, provide and all this stuff. And we've had the company for, I've had the company for like maybe 7 years. And I was just so nervous. And then I think that's where fear creeped in.
Yeah,
I woke up.
I remember you woke up and you're like, I don't want to be an architect anymore. I can't do this anymore. I'm like, what?
Well, you see, that's what happened. I woke up and I told you, I said, listen, I don't think I want to be an architect anymore. And of course, that's when you have no maybe clear path to the challenges that you're dealing with. And then the easiest way just to say, well, I made a horrible mistake. And the problem is not me, is the profession. I chose the wrong profession. So fear, what it did is that it actually pulled me away from the profession that I loved. And I've always said this.
Did you recognize it as fear?
No, not at all. Mm-hmm. If I did, I want to have. There's no way I would have said that. So, and I think it was Machiavelli who said it very clearly that the opposite of love is not hate; it's fear. Because you cannot love something if you're fearful of it. Mm-hmm. And when you hate something, you care. So there's a very close parallel between love and hate. But when it comes to fear, I tell my daughters that if you're afraid of being successful at let's say, volleyball, you might claim that you're not good at it and then say, it's easier. I'm not going to play volleyball because I'm not good. Is it because you're not good, or is it because you're afraid of failure? Mm-hmm. So the fact that you have to kind of identify and try to find clarity. It's where I think that's what I meant, that sometimes it's hard to recognize fear of failure, fear of giving up, mm-hmm. fear of not being loved. So if you want to date someone and you're afraid of someone saying no to you if you want to invite someone out on a date, well, by not doing anything, it's not that you hate the person, it's that you're afraid of being hurt. And that fear is what basically holds you from the possibility of being in love. So the same thing happens with work. If I love my job and I love architecture, do I love architecture or do I love making money in architecture? And of course, it's a business, so you have to make money. But at the same time, I think that I made the mistake of thinking that I did not love the profession instead of realizing that what I was is afraid of failure.
And what do you think, in your experience, that professionals are actually afraid of but don't talk about in the profession?
Well, I think, there's so many things that people are afraid of. And I think you are or have been great with me because you've taught me to try to be vulnerable. And if you're vulnerable, it opens up the possibility of looking within, doing a little bit of introspection, and finding out the real reasons you feel in a certain way.
And you're not, and that you're probably not alone in feeling that way.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, when you're afraid of being found out that you're a failure, you hide it instead of realizing that that is the best opportunity for you to grow through failure. And if you don't like pain, and you're afraid of pain, you're never going to know if you're going to be able to put outside your comfort zone and be able to, push yourself and be successful. And, if things come easy, and you're too used to things come fairly easy, the first time you just don't succeed, that feeling sucks because you don't want to feel like a failure. So if you're afraid of feeling that way again, you're never going to grow. You're going to stay, in the same place, and you're going to blame everyone, but you're not going to really understand in depth that maybe it's not anyone's fault. It's your lack of being able to go through failure through because of fear.
Mm-hmm. Can I share a Chris note?
Yes, of course you can.
So I read recently.
By the way, just so you know, I have a very short attention span. And as I get older, I'm 52 now. So as I get older and older, it's harder for me to stay focused. So Cristina has become my what I used to. I mean, back in the day, there's something called the Cliff Notes. If you read books, you have Cliff Notes, and it helps you get.
It gives you the summary.
The summary.
Yeah.
Well, Cristina is my Chris Note because she gives me summaries. I don't need ChatGPT. I need Cristina. So.
Yeah. So I always share my Chris notes
Yes.
on what I've been reading or podcasts, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So this Chris note, I just read Ray Dalio's Principles.
Yeah.
And one of the things he said that I found incredible was that pain plus reflection equals progress.
Correct. I agree 1,000%.
So the biggest lessons happen when you're in pain and when you take the time to figure out why did you go through this pain and what can you do to avoid it next time. That's when you grow the most.
Well, reflection is it's an important part of it, because if you go through something and you don't give yourself a chance to reflect, you'll do it over and over and over again
until you learn the lesson.
So that's why normally I talk about three things, and you've heard me talk about it. I call it the 3 I's, which is first you need to do some introspection, which is the first I. Then you have to do instruction, because you have to educate yourself. And then the last one is implementation. One without the other is it's incomplete. So being able to look within and find out why are you afraid of something might just give you the aha moment to say, wow, I just have to try to push myself to act. And then the more I do it, the least fearful I'll get, instead of just basically just saying, hey, I don't want to be an architect anymore.
Clarity through action.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but let's go back to the career, and I'm going to ask you, why do you think fear intensifies as people become more successful and take on more responsibility?
Well, I think the question is, first, does fear intensify, yes or no?
Okay, does fear intensify?
No. I'm not trying to control your questions. I'm saying that I think there's a misconception that people assume that as you get older, fear will be reduced because you have more knowledge. You've had a chance to be more, do more introspection. And obviously, the more you live, more experiences, more wisdom should minimize fear. So I agree with you. I think it's worse. I think as you get older, fear intensifies it. And I can tell you that in my experience, the reason that happens is because you have more and more responsibilities. So when you have kids now, it's not you want to be good with them, and you want to be great in business, and you want to be a good husband. So you have so many responsibilities that it gets to be a lot.
There's more at stake.
There's more at stake, and there's more burden, potential burden, if you fail. And the same thing happens with anything. I mean, if you want to have your own business, now you have your own business, and now guess what? You have the fear of failure because you have so many people that are that you take care of, employees, consultants, contractors. So that burden intensifies. More responsibility creeps in, and and fear could also creep in as you get more responsibility. Now, what can you do to actually try to deal with that? Is again being more introspective and be more self-aware of what the outcome could be, and allow your experiences to actually help you, give you enough confidence to be able to say no. And I think this is an important part of fear. Sometimes in business, I'll say that people say yes to many things out of fear that if they say no, they're not going to be able to have enough work, that they're not going to be able to actually have enough money. And they stop thinking that if they're only saying yes out of fear, chances are they're going to make the wrong decision. You might say yes to the wrong client, the client that does not align with your values, the client that does not necessarily value what you bring to the table. And if you're not aligning values, just because you need something doesn't mean that it's going to work out fine. Another thing is that sometimes people say yes to big projects, saying, "Oh, that is such a big project." But instead of looking at the project, you should look at the client. You should look at the end goal of that experience, and not say yes because you're afraid that if you don't say yes to that project, nothing will show up later. Or that if you don't say yes to a project, no one's going to know that you're going to miss out on such an important project. And that ego also creeps in. So, fear, it's not going to go down. It's just how you manage it. And I actually like fear, personally. I think it's awesome. I think that,
How come?
well, I think fear, in a way, it's like anything. I mean, when I've always said that when you have a chip on your shoulder, which I have, I think I have a less of a chip now as I get older. But when I was younger, I would say I had a boulder, right? And that boulder was awesome because it helped me push myself to things that I would not have pushed myself to do if I would have been overconfident, or I would have been like, "Oh, I'm good already." I mean, no. The fact is that I knew how to prove not only to myself, but to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great. So the fear of not being respected, or the fear of not being successful, was very useful.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that if you allow that fear to control yourself, and the same way that you allow that big chip on your shoulder to control every action of your life, it's going to go from healthy fear and what I like to say, healthy paranoia,
Mm-hmm.
to basically
Self-sabotage.
complete self-sabotage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that balance of maybe wisdom comes in. But I do believe a little bit of fear is awesome. And I think that many of the things that I've done in life have come out of fear, to be fair. Now, how I've dealt with it, putting myself outside of my comfort zone, which again, it's not easy. And I can tell you that it's not easy for me. I mean, even this podcast, it's difficult because I feel awkward that I'm saying all this stuff. But it is difficult to put yourself out there. But it is, I think it has been great in my life.
Mm-hmm. And do you think fear is more dangerous early in a career or later when there's more at stake?
I mean, those are. I don't want to be make generic comments because I guess it would depend on the career. I will talk about my experience, and my experience is that it's worse as you get older.
Okay.
Because again, the stakes are higher, and when you allow fear to dictate the decisions that you're gonna make, you're not only gonna affect you, you're gonna affect a lot of people as you become more responsible, and then you have more things and people to take care of. So that's why I would say that that the stakes could be higher as you get older. If you're in a position of leadership and you allow fear to creep in, that's definitely gonna not only gonna affect you, it's gonna affect everyone in your team. Maybe the organization you're leading. Maybe if you're in a political position, that's absolutely gonna fail, or put you in a position of failure. If you are dealing with a very important decision and you allow fear to dictate it again, I think it's gonna be a lot worse. When you're younger, you have less to lose. So that's why I believe that now that I mean, I'm older and I look back, I think that if being fearful is perfectly fine if you do not allow that fear to petrify you.
Yeah. Paralyzing.
If you're able to force and break that fear and not allow it to actually just make you stop, I think it's going to be fine. And the truth is that the younger you suffer and the younger you go through some of this stuff, it's going to hurt a little less as
Yeah.
you get
Well,
older, honestly.
we talk about this in relation to the kids. So
Yeah.
as parents, usually you don't want your kids to suffer. But the thing is, if you don't let them suffer early, then they become paralyzed by fear
Correct.
because they don't want to fail. And then as they get older, they've never experienced failure, so they don't learn resiliency. They don't learn that it's okay to fail and learn from it and get back up and keep going.
And they will not push themselves because if they're okay already, why do that if I'm already okay? So if I have a B, I'm fine. Why do I have to try to push myself to maybe take that course that challenges you? And it's not about grades anymore, and it's not about anyone else. It's about you. That's why I think fear could be okay, but it's okay only when you push through it.
Yeah. What do you think are some common decisions that people make from fear without realizing that they're making them?
Oh, uh, I mean, there's so many. Let's talk from a personal standpoint. If if you feel you do not belong someplace because you're insecure, and everyone has a level of insecurity. Everyone. I mean, you could fake it, but you're still a little insecure. You're not going to give anyone a chance to have the opportunity to get to meet you, or B, you have a chance to grow with them. So it happens that when you're in school, when you're a kid. So if you're afraid of being bullied, you might not be able to actually get to a place in which you'll be surprised that, oh, those people are a lot better than I thought. And I think fear, what it does is that it justifies to you why you shouldn't be friends with them, and you start putting them down. Like, well, you see, they're idiots.
You start making up
I don't want
stories.
to. I don't want to hang out with those people, or I don't want to date her because she's obviously beneath me. Is she, or is because you're afraid of her saying no? So in a very simplistic, personal way, when you're young, um, being able to put yourself in a place of, like I've said already, in a place that is uncomfortable, will not maybe uh, you're not going to give yourself a chance to develop relationships that people that might be great just because you are afraid of making the first step. That's from a personal stuff. Of course, relationships are complicated, but any relationship requires at least one person to make that first effort. If you assume that this is like socialism, that everyone is going to come in at the same time and be perfect and say, "Hey, I'm your friend. I'm your friend," there's always someone that has to break the ice and do something, even if it's awkward. Um, So that's what one example I would say. In business is different. I'm actually the opposite. In business, it's exactly the same. I mean, if you feel that that is an opportunity, but you look at it and you start finding excuses to claim that I'm not going to do it because they're not going to hire me anyway, and because they're not going to be able to see my talent, and they're horrible, and then you start, being poisonous
Yeah,
about that whole
you
thing.
make up stories in your head.
You make up stories in your head, and then now it goes back to what I said before. When you're fearful, you do not take responsibility, and I don't think people connect those two. And I think it's you asked me before if people not necessarily see it. Well, they might not see it because they actually are not willing to take responsibility and then blame other people for your own fears. So,
Well, what is something that if someone who's listening right now is feeling stuck or paralyzed, what's one step that you think they could take to help them regain control?
well, first, let me begin by saying that no one's going to have full control of anything. I mean, and that's the first thing. Once you accept the fact that you are not going to be in control and that you can the only thing you could do is minimize some of the challenges, you're not going to be able to actually be self-aware. So that'll be the first thing. The second thing is that they shouldn't listen to me at all. I mean, I think they should change the. I'm kidding. No, what I'm saying is that they should embrace fear instead of actually just trying to not be afraid. Um, it's how I've said it already. It's how you handle that that's going to make a difference. So, I mean, I could talk to you about some things that are quite personal, but stop
Please.
me.
No, please.
Um, I I've heard a good friend of mine who told me years ago that he was afraid of the water. He knew how to swim, but he wasn't comfortable in open water. And the way he dealt with this it was basically throw himself from a rock to the water, which I thought it was ridiculous because I mean he was basically putting his life at peril. But I asked him, I mean, why would you do that? And he said, well, I needed to break from that fear early on because I actually thought that if I didn't break that, I would be afraid of all the other stuff. So he had incredible self-awareness being young and understanding that he had to do that. And by him being so open about it, it made me realize that I do the same. I absolutely do the same. I do many things that I would never do. And the reason I do it is because I'm afraid of it. And I just don't want to be afraid of it. So the way I deal with many of the things that I'm afraid of is actually, like I said already, by doing them.
Eat the frog.
Yeah, because
Rip out the Band-Aid.
by doing it, I actually assume that the fear is going to go away. Now, two things happen. Number one, in some cases, it just doesn't go away. Like when I jump from a plane, I'm afraid of heights, so I jump on a parachute, and I will never do that again.
But you survived.
I survived, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
But at least I know that I will never do it again. But yeah, I mean, that mentality that you kind of have to do some things that you have to force yourself to do them and be intentional about it.
Yeah.
Has helped me quite a bit in everything. I mean, it helped me in my marriage because, as you and I know, I mean, we're different people, and you are more open to do many things. I'm much closer to putting myself out there.
There is no growth without discomfort.
Correct.
So the story you told about your friend, I think that's a great practice to actually recognize, okay, I'm afraid of this and let me try it. And actually, I can't remember who said this, but the fear is telling you something.
Mm-hmm.
If you're afraid of something, then it's probably because you should maybe go in that direction and conquer that fear. And
I respectfully disagree with whoever said that. I no, I know. If I'm
everything you want is on the other side of fear.
Right. Yeah. That is a very nicely packaged thing to say. And I do,
Hey.
no, wait, and I do believe that
Mhm.
that applies. But at the same time, I would go back to something you said. It's being reflective about that fear. Because if I'm afraid of getting shot, I'm not going to look for someone to shoot me in the face.
Okay, but
Okay, so what?
you
No,
know,
no, I'm making a little bit of a joke, but
but
I'm saying
I think it's more related to leaving your comfort zone.
yes.
Okay,
I know that,
so
and I agree with that.
um,
But fear actually allows you to also understand when to walk away,
mhm.
and that's why I want to go back to being very
There's
much
a book, The Gift of Fear.
yeah.
I read
But
it
but
years ago, but I don't
but
remember.
what I'm saying is that fear gives you focus,
Hmm.
okay? But it also it requires you to be self-aware
Hmm.
of what that fear means. And I believe fear has been in my lifetime. I mean, a great sense of growth. But at the same time, sometimes that fear has been also very helpful in deciding for me or with me what not to do. And I think that's something because I don't want to be generic about what people say in a self-help book, because I have to be clear, guys. I think sometimes fear is absolutely necessary to learn how to say no and walk away. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, if you're fearful of success, you're not going to be successful. That is absolutely true. But sometimes success comes in different ways, and being able to understand that you're afraid and being able to use that in your advantage to either say yes and jump towards that fear, like you said, and also being able to say no. I don't think this is the right thing. Comes with introspection, and I can tell you that in the same way that you asked me in 2008, I did not recognize fear. I think I I use that fear to basically justify my shortcomings instead of understanding that I was just afraid of the fact that I needed to accept that I didn't have the tools to be successful. But it was easier to saying I tried it, and if I'm not a successful architect back now, that means that it's not me, it's the profession that is impossible to conquer. Now,
Sorry, I just
yeah,
want to. I know what happened, so I'll tell the audience. So, what did you actually do when that fear took over? What did you end up doing that ended up?
it gave me focus.
Yeah. Hmm.
It gave me enough focus to say, okay, I don't have that many projects, or most of them are canceled. And every single one of those clients owed me money. So what I did is that I said, okay, I need to find a way to get paid. And what that fear gave me was focus to find a solution.
Hmm.
And that's what we did.
And you did something else too.
What else did I do?
You went to program.
I did. Again, you know what I did, and this maybe a different conversation about the importance of mentorship and listening to people and understanding your limitations. And instead of being afraid of the fact that you have some areas of
Opportunity,
opportunity,
growth, yeah.
yeah, I mean, just be able to say, hey, listen, I don't have that. Maybe I can talk to people that
Hmm.
can at least through their experiences not necessarily tell me what to do, but you're able to learn through their experiences, if they've had this, moment or fear and how they dealt with it. And it gives you some clarity. And I was lucky enough to talk to several people that basically gave me the confidence to know that it's okay to fail, and that it's okay to not have the answers, and it's okay to be humbled. And that led me to a program that I did for a week about business insertion. And when I got to that program, it was interesting because I was when I was invited to this program, at that time I think we had 6 or 7 employees only, and I only had 7 years of leadership in a company. And in order to get to this program, you needed to have 15 years of leadership. And when I got there, it was like the CFO of Coca-Cola, the CFO of Boeing, I mean, it was 20 people who were absolutely successful. They were leading a multi-billion companies and me, which my company was the size of this shoe. So what I did realize, and I thought it was great through that whole fear of not fitting in, fear of not being accepted, fear of realizing that my company in my mind was crap, that everyone has the same problems. The scale is different, obviously, but it was the same problems. And that leadership is a very lonely place. And it's okay to be afraid, but it is very difficult when you're in a leadership position and you're also afraid because you don't necessarily have that many people to talk to because people look up to you for answers. So if you go up to your team and says, I'm afraid we're not going to have any work, I don't know. I mean, people are going to throw themselves out the window, right? So finding that balance between understanding that you're fearful and then stopping, not allowing fear to basically stop you in your tracks and finding solutions so you could now take that fear and use it as a chip on your shoulder and say, hey, you know what? I can do this and I could do a better job. And when you're in an environment in which a lot of successful people are able to be vulnerable and transparent, and you also give yourself a little the chance to put yourself there instead of actually being afraid of not being accepted and not showing up. That was great, and that was 2008. But I would say that I don't think, in general, I've ever shied away from something because of fear. Um, at least in the last 20 years, maybe before we can talk about, trying to go up to Cristina and tell her that I wanted to date her and I was afraid of her saying no. I mean, it's true. And she did say no, by the way. So it was devastating. But I think I recognize fairly quickly when something that I should say yes to, I'm saying no out of fear, and then I just give myself a little bit of time and analyze it and work through it, and I'm lucky enough to have someone to talk to because Cristina is my partner in business and she's also my partner in life. So I am lucky when it comes to that. But I'll say that fear has been an interesting word in my lifetime, and I'm able to recognize it fairly quickly.
Mhm. Well, Ricardo, thank you. This has been great.
Oh,
The introspection and
well, this is
self-awareness.
hard. I have to say, I thought we were going to continue to talk about architecture and business, and now you want to talk to me about fear, which is a difficult thing.
Well, fear plays a role in all our professions,
Yeah, it does.
and it guides our decisions, and it's important to address these topics,
Yeah.
and continue to look inward
Mhm.
and understand, because
Inside out. There you
yes,
go.
transformation begins from the inside out. So we'll see you next time, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.